Resident Evil, or Biohazard in Japan, is a series that you would immediately associate with survival horror. While the series is technically not the first in the genre, it is the series that coined the term. In the early 2000s, not too long after the release of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, Resident Evil would try and do something a little different. No, we're not going to talk about the Game Boy port of the first game, though that's really impressive in itself. Resident Evil would make its first attempt at first-person horror with Resident Evil Survivor, a spin-off of the main series as well as the first title in the Gun Survivor series. These titles were well known for being compatible with the GunCon or G-Con in Europe, a series of light gun peripherals developed by Namco for the PlayStation line, with this game being compatible with the original GunCon and the other games in the series being compatible with the GunCon 2 for the PlayStation 2. Interestingly enough, while the Japanese and European PAL release of the game allowed the use of the GunCon, this feature was removed for the North American release of the game due to the then recent Columbine High School tragedy. Before we continue, I mainly played the PAL version of the game using the GC01 Retro Gun Controller for the Polymega, and as such there will be a lot of infrequent flashing throughout this review, as the screen flashes every time the trigger is pressed, which outside of shooting is also required for movement. So if infrequent flashing lights aren't your thing, best to stop here. I've used footage where I've played using a regular controller up to this point. Resident Evil Survivor takes place in November 1998, approximately a month or so after the destruction of Raccoon City and the events of Resident Evil 2 and 3. Set on the fictional island of Sheena Island, this game has you play as a man who wakes up after a helicopter crash with amnesia as well as holding a gun. After going to the next area, he finds a man lying on the ground holding a dog tag with the name Art Thompson on it. After picking up the tag, he is immediately attacked by a zombie which, after he tags out, drops a key. This key is the start of your adventure to find out what's going on, who you are, and how to get off the island that you're on. But is the game any good? Find out in The Good. I really like the different paths that you could take in this game. After killing the first zombie, you get a choice of 3 different locations to go through. You can choose to go through a church, a restaurant, or a cinema, each with enemies waiting inside for you to take out. After making it into the town itself and fighting off liquor enemies in the process, you come across another 3 different locations: a hospital, an arcade, and a library. This is where your choices start affecting how the game plays out, as depending on your location, this can affect what new handgun you pick up, the enemies you face, as well as enemy placements for the rest of the game. The game is an off-rail shooter of sorts, so you control your character's movement throughout the island and shoot away from the screen with the GunCon, or press a button to bring up a crosshair for you to aim and shoot with when using a controller. Most enemies and models are based off Resident Evil 2, with the exception of the Hunters, which are from the original Resident Evil, and the Umbrella Forces as well as the final boss, which are unique to this game. After completing the game or loading a save, which I'll be talking more about later, you can start what's effectively a New Game Plus and explore the paths you didn't take just to see how things change up and what weapons you get, as well as the second set of areas to choose from determines what type of additional handgun you get. Your character has the choice of 3 additional handguns alongside your starting one, which makes 4 total, and each handgun deals different damage, has different ammo capacity and reload speeds, so as you play through the game on extra playthroughs, you'll find it significantly more manageable. While you ultimately end up in the same key places, I really enjoyed exploring the different ways you could go in order to reach those places, and this certainly adds to the game's replay factor. It's also the only thing I really liked about this game, so let's move on to what I didn't like in The Bad. Although minor, let's talk about my grievances with saving. Although the game is reasonably short enough and can be completed in under an hour to an hour and a half if you know what you're doing, saving can only be done in 3 situations. You either have to beat the game in one sitting, lose all of your lives, or choose not to continue. This will allow you to save the game but then restart from the very beginning. Thankfully, you get to retain the weapons you had at the time of saving, which will make your next playthrough easier. But I think even save points at certain parts of the game would have made it a little more forgiving. It's clear that there are points where you can catch your breath and not worry about enemies, such as the room in the sewers, as well as Lot and Lily's room in their house, for example. And I think that would have been good if you needed to take a break or had to go do something instead of the good old leave the PlayStation on. While some could argue that not having saves adds to the challenge, I think a good compromise in this case would be to allow it for easy mode and disable it for normal mode. In terms of the story, there isn't a lot to write home about, though credit where credit's due for having a darker take on Umbrella experimenting on children as a plot point, and with a lot of more detailed notes. Another thing the different paths also affect is which characters you come across and who appears towards the end. And unfortunately, they all share the exact same role. I think the game could have expanded on the story a little by having these characters get more involved and in different ways as they try to stop you from leaving the island, instead of just seeing them in a cutscene and play a minor role when you make your second choice on where to go next, and then never appear again until towards the end. One of them actually appears if you select the library or arcade option, but only plays a role near the end if you had gone through the library. He just shoots at you from a window if you pick the arcade. There is another instance where you get locked in, hear that person laughing at you, and then you have to deal with the creatures in that room just to potentially never see him again, and leave things unresolved. I just kind of wish the game's plot could have been fleshed out more, as it would have added more to the incentive of going through the other paths and either expanded on or give the alternative accounts of the late game to perhaps even explain the changing enemy placements. Would be good if the other characters were a little more involved in the plot too. Another issue I had with the game was how awkward it was to shoot enemies directly in front of you at your feet. Reasonably early into the game, you'll be attacked by a couple of zombie dogs and lickers. When you're attacked in the game, the camera will focus on what's attacking you, and quite often with dogs and lickers, and by extension the spiders, you'll look down so that you can shoot them after they've hit you. The problem is that with the controls you can't readily look back up, or if the enemy is right at your feet, you can't look down until you're attacked. You can aim with the gun con providing that you can see them on screen, or using the crosshair that comes when you press the button on the controller, but not being able to look up or down, which I guess is understandable given the limited amount of buttons on the gun con which are already assigned for you to turn left or right, and having to point the gun away from the screen and pull the trigger to move forwards or backwards, makes these enemies more of a nuisance than they already are. Other than that, there's not much else to talk about with this game, so let's wrap things up with the opinion. Resident Evil Survivor, for all its faults, I still found reasonably enjoyable to play with both the light gun and with a controller, though I preferred the light gun. I did like shooting up most of the enemies from Resident Evil 1 and 2 in first person, as well as collecting the different guns and exploring the different paths. The save gripe I had was minor at best, but being unable to look up or down was a real nuisance, and I really do wish the story could have been expanded on more, but for what it is, I think the game wasn't entirely bad. If you like Resident Evil, or even if you want to dabble in light gun games, then this is definitely one to look into, and then see how the formula evolved and changed as you go through the other Gun Survivor games. I just wish our hero wasn't a forgotten footnote like many other Resident Evil characters. Wouldn't mind seeing him reappear even if a cameo appearance. So with that, it's time for my rating. I would give Resident Evil Survivor Handgun B out of 10. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next Infinite Backlog review. If you enjoyed today's review, feel free to like, comment and subscribe for more. You can check out our other videos or follow us on X, Instagram and Facebook. Once again, thank you for watching.